And finally, we've arrived. Part 3 of my 3-part series on my Modern Warfare beta review. This section I've called The Ugly, in the good, the bad, and the ugly. And again, I'm going to leave links to the first and second video down in the description for you. Part 1, what I liked about the beta. Part 2, what I disliked about the beta. And here is Part 3. So these things are what I find particularly egregious and outrage-inducing. These are the problems that are almost game-breaking to me, or at least the problems that suck 90% of the fun out of the game. The first of these is the friendly nameplates and enemy nameplates display choices, I guess. I don't know exactly why this is, and I've been thinking about it and I can't really pinpoint it. But there are times when I see a friendly and I think he's an enemy, and I start shooting him, and then his nameplate comes into view or appears out of thin air. But more than that, there were many times when I would see an enemy thinking it's a friendly because there happens to be a friendly behind the enemy, but the friendly is 200 meters behind him, behind 8 separate buildings, and his nameplate shows up in the exact spot that you would expect a friendly nameplate to show up, as if they were in the position of the enemy who's right in front of you. And then all of a sudden you get killed by some guy who you thought was your teammate. Again, I'm not 100% sure what's causing this, and this might just be a me problem, because I haven't heard too many people talking about this, but there are a lot of times where I think that enemies are actually friendlies, and then I get killed. They need to stop showing nameplates of friendlies if they're behind 8 buildings. That's what the minimap is for. I'll know there's people there from the minimap. I don't need a nameplate indicator when a teammate is on the opposite side of the map. Don't worry, it gets worse. Next up, we have general map design / Azir Cave. Holy shit. If this isn't the worst map in any Call of Duty, if this isn't the worst map in any video game ever, I can't think of a worse Modern Warfare 2 map, Black Ops 4 map, Modern Warfare 3 map, Halo Reach map, Battlefield 5 map. No map in any Call of Duty, first-person shooter, Civ 6 game, any fictional work of art that has ever existed has been as bad as Azir Cave. The design choice completely boggles the mind. The interior of the cave has little pathways that lead away from the opening of the cave, but also just lead to dead ends. So you can camp in this 6x6 little pathway that just stops at a wall. Why do those exist? That doesn't make any sense. The visibility in the cave is completely atrocious. There are random stalagmites or geological pillars that are formed in the dead center. So it's not even a throughway in the cave, but it's these sort of lanes that are on different points in the z-axis, and there's a bunch of little shit blocking every possible sightline. And then when you go outside of the map, first of all, there's 8 different ways to enter the cave. So even if you're trying to go through, you can get shot from outside the cave at all of these random points, these random entryways. I mean, the cave is just it's an atrocious, disgusting map. It makes me irrationally angry that this map exists. And to compound that, you can't avoid the cave unless you're playing Team Deathmatch. Because in Domination, for example, B is right dead center in the clusterfuck. The headquarters often goes inside the cave. It's just a nightmare of a map. And it seems to me that this is going to be emblematic of the general map design philosophy for Modern Warfare, and I am not pleased with that at all. This is not a 3-lane map, but not only that, it's a map that's not 3 lanes and is also shitty. Some of the other maps I think are okay. I think Hackney Yard, by and large, is a decent map. It has some logic to it. But then we look at a map like Garza Raid or Gonzo Raid, I don't know what the fuck it's called. That map, even for 10v10, there are way too many buildings and just little camp spots that serve really no purpose. Like, you could just remove a lot of these peripheral little buildings and still have a large map that is still an enjoyable, fun experience for all of the players. And you'd even still be able to keep plenty of, like, camping spots in the buildings that are more toward the center of the map. But on the peripherals, there are just a lot of buildings that serve no purpose other than to needlessly clutter and confuse the map and its design. And then there's also Gunrunner, which again I think is actually a decent map. Again, it has some logic to it. I don't really have a problem with this map or Hackney Yard exactly, but they also don't strike me as very great maps. But this is also, you know, these maps are brand new, so they could grow on me. The fact that Azir Cave exists and the problems with it and the problems with Grasna Raid, in my opinion, do not bode well at all for this game. Because, I mean, that's 50% of the maps that were in the beta that are not good. And if you compare that to virtually any other Call of Duty beta, I don't recall one where those maps were as bad as these ones have been. But by far the most startling example of this is Azir Cave. It's an abomination, and shouldn't make it to launch, frankly. No one likes it. Next up on the ugly, we have the fact that you cannot see players who are in the dark fucking at all. There were numerous times where I would check a specific building or area of the map where I know people commonly camp. Like, I look, aiming down sights, ready to bang, because I know people camp in there. And then I don't see anyone, but I still get shot, because it turns out there was actually someone in there. Because not only do you not see the player model at all, you also don't see the nameplates with any kind of consistency. Even worse than this, there were times where I would look in these dark areas, and I would see a nameplate, and I would just be like, okay, well, there's a guy in there, but I don't fucking see him. And I see the nameplate, so I know that there's someone there. I know that I should be able to see something. I'm specifically looking for someone to be there, and I can't see them. And then, of course, they can see you with perfect clarity because you're not in the dark. This needs to change somehow. Now, the way Black Ops 4 got around this, for example, they have like a bunch of red lights on all the player models. So even if they were in a dark area of the map, you could look for these red lights in addition to the enemy health bar, in addition to the enemy nameplate, and with enough reliability, you'd be able to have enough visual acuity to see them and shoot at them and play the game. But that is not the case in Modern Warfare whatsoever. There are also times, like this happened to me a lot on Gunrunner, in those vents that are adjacent to the B flag, where you enter the vents and for a second you can't see anything. And then once you're in the vents, all of a sudden you get like a normal amount of brightness, but when you first go in the vent, it's just black. Hey, what the fuck is up with that? That doesn't make any sense. If this is supposed to reflect like your eyesight adjusting to low light conditions, it doesn't happen that quickly. So just leave it black the entire time if you're going for realism, or for at least like 30 seconds. But here's a better idea. Fuck realism. If I go in the vents, I should be able to see something. That's the most egregious example I've found so far. You go in those vents, it is completely pitch black, and then you give it maybe 2 seconds, and all of a sudden you can see perfectly. Doesn't make any sense. This game has a real problem with dark areas in general, and more pointedly, enemies being in these dark areas being virtually invisible. Next up is fucking Claymores. Here, I'm not even sure. Claymores are... The fact that Claymores exist in this game is another one of the mechanics that I've referred to in the past in this video. Just like dark, invisible character models, just like high sprint out time, this is one of those gameplay mechanics in Modern Warfare that heavily encourages people to camp and heavily punishes people for running and gunning. And Claymores are particularly bad for a number of reasons. Number one, they explode virtually instantly. So even if you double sprint through a claymore, to my knowledge, you're still dead if it's positioned properly. And perhaps even if it's not positioned properly. There is virtually no counterplay to a claymore. You could make the argument that every time you open a door, you should look for claymores, and then you can back up to a safe distance, shoot it, and then enter the door. And that would technically constitute counterplay. The problem with that is, what if I'm running away from an enemy, and it's either I enter this building or I turn around and get shot by two people? Well, now there's no counterplay involved at all, because it is entirely too burdensome to expect players to never run into a building, even if they're in grave danger, if they don't enter that building. Now, I understand that they serve a purpose in a game like Call of Duty, which is area denial, making sure people don't just run through you. However, we have proximity mines in this game, or bouncing betties, which serve the same purpose, but unlike claymores, they have counterplay. With a bouncing betty, it does the exact same thing you want a claymore to do, except if someone runs into the building and they have quick enough reflexes and they understand the situation, they can prone their character, the explosion goes off, and they're safe. So even if it doesn't get a kill, you've significantly impeded that player from entering that doorway. This, in my opinion, is a perfect middle ground. I think the existence of bouncing betties are perfectly fine because they accomplish a goal, which is to defend a doorway. Whether or not they results in a kill, they accomplish that goal. So you either kill someone entering that doorway, or you force them to take a 3-second detour in that they have to prone when they enter the doorway. But importantly, they offer some kind of counterplay on the part of the person entering the building. Claymores have no such counterplay. You walk in that door, you're fucking dead. Because bouncing betties are already coded in, they already exist, they already function, I'm of the opinion that claymores should simply be removed from the game. Because why would you ever run a bouncing betty if you can just run a claymore? You can get multi-kills with both, they both serve precisely the same purpose, except a claymore is far more effective because you can't play around it. Claymores should simply be removed from the game. All they do is encourage, again, camping, and it's not fun for anyone involved. And lastly, if you've been watching this far, I'm sure you've been expecting me to say exactly what I'm about to say about Modern Warfare and the beta. The ugliest, most egregious thing about this game right now is the fact that the minimap does not show enemy gunfire. Now, I actually wrote a Reddit post, lol Reddit by the way, that I will link to in the description, and I strongly encourage anyone who agrees with this point to check that out, give it an upvote, and give it some comments. My argument for adding enemy gunfire to the minimap is twofold. On the one hand, I am in favor of this for all the reasons that everyone else has been saying, and for all of the reasons that I'm sure you yourself have heard if you're watching this video. It makes it easier to run and gun, it feels more like Call of Duty, it discourages camping more, you won't get shot in the back as often, etc., etc. But in addition, originally the minimap didn't exist at all, and there was a compass that showed the direction of enemy gunfire. And they walked this back and they said, okay, look, we're gonna split the difference with you, community, consumer, who is going to either pay or not pay for the game. Doesn't make any fucking... We're gonna split the difference with you. We're gonna add the minimap permanently, but it's only going to show teammate positions unless you have a UAV, and then it will also show all enemy positions. Now, they did this change, and they kept the compass in that shows the direction of enemy gunfire. So what this has resulted in is a number of things. Number one, it is the dev's intention to show you where enemy gunfire is coming from. And the evidence of this is that the compass does exactly that. Number two, it is the intention of the devs to show you where your teammates are. And the evidence of this is the fact that they've added the permanent minimap that always shows where your teammates are. Now, this begs the question, why the fuck would you separate these two elements that could easily both be incorporated into the minimap into two separate UI elements on your HUD? It makes no sense. When they added a persistent minimap that shows teammates, the compass became an anachronism that they've yet to take out. So they want to show me enemy gunfire, they want to show me teammate position, but they separate the two elements in such a way that it's impossible for me to look at both at the same time. I can't monitor my minimap and the compass and keep my eyes focused on the actual game, the actual field, at the same time. So what this translates to, in practice, and I'm not the only person who does this, I've talked to many people and they all say the same thing, you virtually have to ignore either the minimap or the compass to not be always looking at your heads-up display. But if the devs are open to showing us teammate position and enemy gunfire, yet they're also forcing players to ignore either the compass or the minimap, then the heads-up display is quite literally not working as intended. You can't monitor enemy gunfire and teammate position and the game at the same time because the enemy gunfire is located in a separate position on your HUD than the teammate position is. The solution to this is very simple, and it's what everyone's been clamoring for. It is to simply remove the compass and take the dots that show enemy gunfire and move them from the compass to the minimap, like everyone's used to, like everyone wants, like is far more intuitive than the current convoluted, frankly completely unusable heads-up display we have now. And this isn't a radical proposal. This is what really pisses me off about this whole argument, is that the devs haven't said anything about returning to a traditional minimap, but if they're willing to show us enemy gunfire already, then there is no loss in adding the traditional minimap by transferring enemy gunfire from the compass to the minimap from what they're currently doing, except to increase the quality of life of the player. So it's not like they're staying firm on not allowing enemy gunfire to be seen unless you have UAV, because they already show it on the compass. So if you're gonna show us enemy gunfire anyway, why not put it in the most logical place that can actually be monitored in the game? Because again, you can't look at the compass and the minimap and the field at the same time. You're already open to showing us enemy gunfire because it's on the compass, so just put it on the minimap so that everyone's quality of life is vastly increased, and there is some kind of coherence and usability within the heads-up display. Because as it stands, again, this HUD is not working as intended if the intention is to monitor teammates and enemy gunfire while playing the game at the same time. Again, I encourage you guys to go check out the Reddit thread I made. I wrote this down in a very cogent, logical, easy to follow format that is a lot less impassioned and angry than this video is, because even thinking about it pisses me off, let alone ranting about it. Those are my thoughts on the Modern Warfare beta. If you hated this video and think I'm a dumb shit, leave me a thumbs down. If you agreed with some or most of my points, a thumbs up would be very gracious of you. Additionally, I would like to know your guys' thoughts on my analysis. What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? Let me know in the comments. I will reply to every single one. In addition, I stream every day at twitch.tv/Razanon, and I'm dummy interactive with my chat. So if you're able to stop by while I'm live, I will absolutely be able to talk to you about whatever the fuck you want to talk about. Have a great night, pray for the minimap return, and I will see you, hopefully, in Modern Warfare. Stay humble, boys. Oops.